This video is about the second stage of photosynthesis called Photosystem I. Now, if you haven't viewed the first video over stage 1 of photosynthesis, this will be very confusing possibly. So you'll want to make sure you see stage 1 before you see this video. So here we are in our notes, a little review of stage 1. Sunlight had hit chlorophyll, excited electrons had bounced off, and we have electrons making their way down the membrane. Water had been split by a water splitting enzyme into hydrogen and oxygen. Oxygen was given off by the plant, and hydrogen was building up inside the thylakoid. So in this space here, we have this membrane represents the thylakoid membrane, as you can see in this picture. So you have the outside of the thylakoid and then the inside. So this would be the outside and the inside as it's labeled here on your picture. So we start stage 2 with hydrogen ions building up here and electrons traveling down the membrane, like through the membrane. So we will look at stage 2. Same story as stage 1 as far as how you take your notes. We have stage 2, and then we have the picture of stage 2. And this picture actually shows stage 1 and 2 together. So what I've done is I've circled stage 1. So if you go ahead and circle that in your notes now, that'd be great. So stage 1, which is called photosystem 2, is where the light hits the pigment, it jumps, the electrons jump off of chlorophyll and make their way down. The hydrogen is from water is being also collected here in the thylakoid space. And this whole thing is a thylakoid, as you can see from the blown up picture of a chloroplast. This is one thylakoid, and that's where photosynthesis is happening for stages 1 and 2. So go back to our notes. In stage 2, called photosystem 1, we have actually 2 electron transport chains that make ATP and NADPH. So on one side here we have how to make ATP, and the other side how to make NADPH. So A, B, and C will show you how to make ATP. So that in the first step of making ATP, we have electrons that have been excited from chlorophyll are passed through molecules like proteins, which pump the hydrogen ions into the thylakoid as the electrons pass through it. So this is what that means. The electrons that had been excited from the light hitting the chlorophyll are traveling on, and as they pass through these proteins, they make them excited, and they kind of jump into gear, and they grab a hydrogen and pump it in. This is active transport. They pump it into the thylakoid, inside the thylakoid space. So here come the electrons, and hydrogen ions get pumped in. And notice we're gathering all of these hydrogen ions. So label this A as the electron flows through this protein, and the protein pumps the hydrogen ions into the thylakoid. Now that is letter B. As hydrogen ions build up inside a thylakoid, there's a concentration gradient. So what we're looking at is just labeling all these hydrogen ions congregating letter B. And you can also write that there's a high concentration of hydrogen inside the thylakoid and a low concentration outside the thylakoid. So label this high and this low for hydrogen ions. So now we have A and B. For C, the next step, we have hydrogen ions passively moving through a carrier protein, binding ADP and P together, making ATP. So when the hydrogen ions are building up, as we said in letter B, a high concentration of hydrogen, because they're being pumped in from the electrons moving through, lots of hydrogen, they passively move from high to low through these proteins. Now, when this protein, it's an ATP producing carrier protein, when this protein carries hydrogen ions through from high to low, which is passive transport, every time this happens, it actually will grab an ADP and a phosphate and make ATP. And so that's why it's called the ATP producing carrier protein. So to say it again, when hydrogen ions are pumped through, when they pass through from high to low, this protein actually creates ATP from ADP and then a free phosphate. So that's A, B, and C, as you can label it, C right here to describe it. Now, that's how to make ATP in stage 2 of photosynthesis. Now to make NADPH is a little more simple. Go back to those excited electrons in the membrane that have been excited from jumping off of chlorophyll from sunlight. So here's more sunlight, it's hitting chlorophyll, exciting electrons, letting them jump off. They go through other different proteins called electron acceptors, and they basically take NADP plus and they add a hydrogen to form NADPH. Here is the reaction in your notes. NADP plus H plus yields NADPH. Now this is actually the name of NADPH. So it doesn't matter what that name is, but I just put it up there for you. It's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate. But you do not have to know that. It's just a really cool thing to say. So here's what you need to know. To make ATP and NADPH, why are we doing this? ATP and NADPH are energy-carrying molecules, and we're going to need those to make glucose in the 3rd stage of photosynthesis. Remember, photosynthesis takes light and makes glucose. And that's what we have to do, but we haven't done it yet. All we've done now in stage 2 is make the molecules we're going to need for stage 3. So, going back to our stage 1 and 2. To make NADPH, you want to probably write this up here, because here is where the reaction happens. So we're making ATP in this area, and we're making NADPH up here, as far as the visual aids. So after stage 1 and 2, we have made 2 molecules that we need for the next stage.